You know, sometimes I feel that I haven't really been following my mission statement with my channel. I never really established the core of what I do here aside from covering varying things from animated media and occasionally games, but I want to make my channel to express appreciation for media in an environment where it feels like everyone else is doing the opposite. I made my channel to talk about Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, which has become my favorite DreamWorks movie, as I found not only so much enjoyment from its incredible animation and art design and story, to finding it one of the most relatable stories tackling anxiety, maturity, and responsibility that I have ever seen in my life. And I have made multiple hour-long videos talking about my love for this movie when it feels like I'm truly alone in the universe in that regard. And I still entirely try to be positive in all my videos because I want to appreciate media in all regards and give people more insights and nuance on various things. I think you can argue every one of my videos does that in some regard, but I still feel that I rarely have ever matched that same defending an unpopular movie and trying to put spotlight on its great aspects side that I felt gave it more depth. I mean, I have done a few like with Freebirds last Thanksgiving, and actually pretty recently with Elio, a movie that's honestly fantastic and extremely well done and emotional and everything an audience would want, but no, complain about the bean mouse, that's clearly the only thing that matters in animated movies. It does bring me to my distaste of the animation community and the shallow animation is cinema mindset that plagues the internet, basically only propping up the commonly consented mainstream masterpieces as worthy cinema and prop them up like that's all animation is, while crapping on anything that doesn't reach that perfection and ignore all its good aspects. The most shallow and hypocritical form of appreciation for an entire medium possible from people who claim to love it. But it's reminded me of another movie I kind of feel gets that treatment that I honestly might disagree with. Monsters vs. Aliens. In almost the way like Freebirds, I kind of feel its reception is a mix of nostalgic appreciation, harsh critique, and, well, meme legacy that just kind of made it hard to really get a common consensus. However, when it comes at least to YouTube reviewers, I've seen quite a lot of negative takes and videos from certain other content creators. I feel DreamWorks is one of the biggest cases of the animation community propping up a studio only by the handful of animated masterpieces and like 3 franchises, and it's crapping on everything that doesn't meet that standard. And I cannot stand that mindset. But I think there's stuff to this movie. I think it does deserve another look. Maybe it's just nostalgia talking, I mean I did saw it and like it as a kid, but I think this movie does have good aspects and things to it that people aren't giving enough credit or respect to. Like enough for me to go, hey come on don't be like that, seeing criticism online. It doesn't have the emotional stranglehold Ruby Gillman has over me, but I still have enough connected to it to try and stand up for it. And it has gotten a meme revival, which you could correlate to appreciation, but I want to like give it an actual legitimate one, not just for the irony or joke. I want to go through this movie and highlight what I think it does right, finally sticking my neck out for another animated movie I feel needs more legitimate love, and even go into more of its history and its weird subsequent media. Like this meme, you wanna know where it came from? Well I'm gonna tell you, just wait. And hell, I might do it with other movies. Tell me if you have one, like I'm looking at you Croods, I think you need a second chance. First, a bit of a history lesson. Of course, this movie came out on March 27th in 2009. This movie was kind of sandwiched between bigger releases like with Madagascar 2 coming out before, and like between Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon. Of course, massive juggernauts of the studio in both box office and acclaim, and people love to treat them like they're the only movie the studio ever made. But what about how it started? Well, things kind of got insane, and I don't know how many people knew. Originally, it was an adaptation of a horror comic, Rex Havoc and the Ass Kickers of the Fantastic. Now that's a title. It seemingly was planned for a while as the trademark was bought in 2002. Reminder, the movie was released in 2009, like literally 7 years later. And yeah, just a reminder that pre-production on animated movies take freaking forever and more people need to know about it. Again, can animation fans please actually respect the time and effort that goes into the animated films they claim to love and should be respected as an artistic medium? But yeah, in the case of this, it is pretty obvious as it was going to be a straightforward adaptation. Even more hearing the actual synopsis of the book. Like seriously, this is sounding like an unironic version of that AVGN joke. And in about 2005, we got an early plot synopsis of a monster hunter needing to battle aliens disrupting cable service, and Rex assembling other monsters to fight them, including some who were in the final product. Still sounds insane, but still not as much as that. But I mean, it's DreamWorks. They have the reputation for being weird and unorthodox. But eventually, even that molded into the more straightforward, well if you can even call it that, movie we know, straight to the point, Monsters vs. Aliens. But this refinement gave them a bigger focus, basically being a huge callback to the 50s style sci-fi B-movies that molded a generation. In fact, pretty much everything can correlate to an iconic sci-fi movie or property, by Normica obviously being the 50-foot woman, Bob the Blob, Dr. Cockroach the Fly, plus some Vincent Price for good measure, Insectosaurus also representing Japanese kaiju, basically fusing Mothra and Godzilla, and a missing link being the creature from the Black Lagoon, or the Gillman. Not you, Ruby, the original one. Wait, he's not based off him? Come on, he clearly is. Like, it's not just entirely based off the creature, he also has some like aquatic ape, but it's still obvious. Even the villain Galaxhar takes influence from multiple notable aliens around this time, and even his mechs. And as someone who's completely fallen in love with old monster movie culture, Hell yeah, let's do this! Let's go make a homage to this entire notable era of movies and make a fun throwback in a modern lens, and pretty much reintroduce them to a new generation. I think it's a solid idea. Hell, even the movie's title is a big callback to those movies with so many monsters versus monster titles and plots. It's a thing I kinda wish more people got and realized, like it's not just a random idea, it's an intentional throwback to an old sci-fi movie style, but with a modern take. Which again, I think supports it and makes it more solid. Like there's more purpose and layers to it. Especially if you're a fan of that weird era of movies, you're gonna get into it more. It was also kind of a pioneer for DreamWorks, as it was the first to be directly produced in stereoscopic 3D instead of being converted after, basically making it from the ground up to try and pop out on its scenes in 3D releases. And it took a lot to render for the studio. This has been pretty much the standard for all DreamWorks movies going forward, and it started with this movie, so hey, that's one thing going for it. But enough preamble, let's actually get into monsters versus aliens. But in my case, if my last big DreamWorks video is anything to go off of, the real monster is going to be YouTube copyright, so I probably expect a lot of flip footage. And right away from the literal first shot, we see how much this movie is a throwback to old 50s sci-fi, with the standard DreamWorks opening completely in black and white, with the fishing boy getting abducted. Poor kid can never catch a break with these. But really starting off in deep space, with a planet being mysteriously destroyed and chucking a pretty sick looking meteor to the Milky Way galaxy. I also love the red space background. Much different from a usual blue or purple space, it already gives a subtle feeling of unease throughout it, actually foreshadowing the nefarious reason for this. It reaches a US outpost, with granted a pretty distracting forced 3D moment, but again it was made from the ground up with 3D stereoscope in mind, so I can't blame them for showing the audience right away. And given a line that's no doubt very relatable to people my age in the job market.
What do we do? No one ever told us what to do. The only reason I took the job is because you never have to do anything.
Then cutting to our main character, Susan Murphy, played by Reese Witherspoon, who's ready to marry her fiance and getting ready for the wedding. And admittedly, one part of the movie I think really hasn't aged well is how the humans are designed and rendered. Now, Uncanny Valley has always been a thing for 3D animated humans, and DreamWorks has tried a lot to make variety between realistic and cartoony people to try and even it out. But I think the humans, especially nowadays, just look super off, and I think it's really the texturing. Like, I don't think the shape and the caricatureness of the designs are bad. They kind of remind me a lot of how Mega Man would try to do it a few years later. But they're given really detailed and fleshy textures in their bodies, which really doesn't mesh well with their cartoonish and exaggerated proportion, not to mention the extensive blush. I also feel their eyes are too big, but maybe again it's just the realistic textures that make it so off. On the monsters, it's fine, it makes them look really detailed, but on the humans, yeesh, it's really distracting. It makes the intro when it's entirely just people kind of hard to watch. Susan at least looks somewhat normal, but everyone else, yeesh. It's like if the people in B movie had realistic textures. I don't know why they did it. Maybe they wanted to show off the new technology and maybe look good at the time, but it really doesn't age well now. I do think Megamind managed to do a good balance with the more cartoonish face, but still keeping the detailed textures to a minimum, even if I do hate Megamind's girly ass eyelashes. So yeah, admittedly that's one part of the movie I don't think aged well and looks off, though luckily it's mostly a problem in the intro. But like most monster movies, the worst part is before they show up. But still, this is setting up Susan getting married to the local weatherman, Derek, and everyone's super happy. Though interesting that they made this the focus, not only for the contrast to what happens later, but it could be another homage to Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, where Nancy's marriage is a big plot point. But Susan dreams of going to Paris like most other young women randomly gifted extraordinary power by cosmic means. But Derek already shows his more skeevy nature by saying that they canceled their Paris honeymoon so that he can focus on advancing his reporter career. And while Susan is still disappointed, she doesn't really stand up for herself, so trying to be happy with them and optimistic about their eventual chances, which is a big part of her character growth through the movie to become a stronger person. And that growth will soon be very literal, as the meteorite shark coincidentally is heading right to them and... What? Okay, seriously, I did not edit that sound that's in the movie. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that's pretty funny. Apparently no one saw or heard the impact and no one acknowledged what happened to her. Maybe it's also kind of a joke, but that's pushing it. Getting her ready for the wedding as the government starts to pull up. But of course during the ceremony, she starts glowing like a Listerine commercial and grows in size and no doubt waking many kids in the audience. I'll keep those jokes to a minimum, I promise. Also, this weirdly kills me.
Hit me the government.
This movie has a lot of absurdist humor which I can't help but love. And hey, look at that, cinematic parallels. We'll admit the shot is pretty cool and a pretty good way to show off that stereoscopic 3D, with the government also fully on assault trying to capture her as she's completely terrified. God, how strong is her dress? Also, her picking up her husband, or would be in this case, is another parallel to the 50-Foot Woman. And that's not all, as this other funny moment. That could be a reference to a similar, albeit probably an intensely funny moment from another giant human-based sci-fi movie, The Amazing Colossal Man. eventually being sedated right in front of her fiance. Honestly, not a bad intro, clearly trying to get across a setup in the idea of Susan's perfect life being changed forever in a horrible way, but I do kinda wish the movie focused more on the dysmorphia, fear, and horror of the scene. It does kinda work with Susan desperately trying to escape and stop herself from becoming giant, but I feel it's not enough, like at least change the music to be more intense. Do appreciate the good use of angles and sides, it's a thing this movie does pretty well all things considered. Not as good as Ruby Gillman did years later, but still impressive and deserves more attention for its choreography and angling, which the movie does do a lot and I love it. Now later she wakes up in a strange cell compound with some really nice shots. Again, this movie does have good choreography for the scale. Legitimately can't tell if she's still giant here. And while I said I wish the transformation sequence was given a bit more appropriate atmosphere, I do love the silent uncomfortableness of the scene we feel exactly like her. But she's not alone as she soon meets her fellow monster prisoners. Previously mentioned, there's Dr. Cockroach, PhD, played by Hugh Laurie. Yes, House himself, kind of amazing. He's obviously a parody of The Fly, where a scientist and a teleporter accidentally infuse their DNA with the fly. Plus with the mix of horror icon Vincent Price, who was also in the movie, very nice. In origin, it was a brilliant scientist trying to make an experiment to make humans as resilient as a cockroach, with unfortunate side effects. And he's probably the most rational member of the bunch aside from Susan, mostly logical and sensible, basically being the brains of the group, but still falls into his mad scientist eccentricities. Still, that resilience comes in handy in plenty of situations. Also love the detail of his scurrying animation. Then, the missing link, or just Link, played by Will Arnett of all people. As I said, apparently this is based off prehistoric sci-fi monsters, but 100% likely a reference to the creature from the Black Lagoon. I think it's a link between man and fish. It was a prehistoric fish man frozen and discovered by scientists, which thawed and terrorized Cocoa Beach. His personality, though, is a bit of a kind of womanizing jock, which again fits for the Gillman, but really the only one without any special eccentricities, also making him really a straight man in all of this. And then there's the most iconic one, the comic relief of the group, Bob. Obviously a reference to the sci-fi monster, the Blob, and actually somewhat the crawling eye, but with an actual personality than just an ever-growing consuming mass. Effectively an experiment gone wrong with a genetically modified tomato, randomly made an indestructible gelatinous mass with sentience, plus his ability to digest anything not only helps in the movie, but also fits being a reference to the Blob as its primary ability. Now, Bob doesn't have a brain, but is still sapient, albeit pretty much a dope in a Patrick Star sense. And also, Seth Rogen gets a bad rap in circles by his prominence in voice acting for movies, but I think this is one of his best VA works. Like, his voice and delivery really does sell the idiotic character of the dude, but also makes his line legitimately funny and endearing.
What? Help me! Sorry, I was just staring at this bird over there.
And his iconic laugh actually really fits the character, because of course this guy laughs like that. I actually consider it perfect casting and not some arbitrary Seth Rogen role like so many others feel. And it's no wonder this guy became pretty much a meme machine even to the modern day. And then Insectosaurus, by far the biggest monster, even bigger than Susan. Now based off of Japanese kaiju from their old movies, being a fusion of Godzilla and Mothra. Really neat and unique concept, and I appreciate how this movie expands from just Western monster movies, but also includes iconic Eastern monsters. Really unifies the whole monster the entire sci-fi monster movie genre. Fittingly enough, the product of nuclear radiation, mutating a growth to a behemoth kaiju that rampages across Tokyo. I do love how this movie includes so many different monster origins of the sci-fi era, from radiation to experiments gone wrong to Agent Horror's Unearthed to space-based mutations. Insectosaurus though can't talk and doesn't seem to be actually sapient, just being basically a huge animal, where they're only controlled by luring them to lights. Not only do they have immense size and strength as a 350-foot monster, but also they can shoot silk from their nose, which is a nice fusion of Mothra's silk making and Godzilla's atomic breath. Also might as well talk about Susan, as is soon named Ginormica. Kind of offensive to rename a real person, but then again Dr. Cockroach got renamed that, so. As I said, based on the 50-foot woman, about a woman who gets infected with a giant alien's radiation, turning herself to a similar sized giant going on a rampage after her husband cheats on her. First off, the design I love. I love the white hair being the change to her superpowered form. It looks natural and unnatural at the same time. I think it's a cool way to reinterpret the 50-foot woman. I also love her outfits, like a mix of prison guard but also a hero uniform, which perfectly fits her situation. I love the black and orange highlights. It's striking but looks great. I love the detail of the stitches that look like fabric patterns, that are actually that they just hastily stitched an outfit her size. It's awesome. Though just as a 50-foot woman XP, she has proportional size and strength given by her growth, if not actually more, charged with quantonium. Though funnily enough, she's not actually 50 feet tall but 49 feet and 11 inches. It's hilarious and again fun for the parody. But yeah, suddenly being thrust into a prison compound with weird ass monster guys basically sends Susan into a complete panic attack just after the shock of what happened to her on her wedding day, thinking she's in a nightmare. Also love the lampshading and joke here.
We are in the presence of the rare female monster.
No way, it's a boy. Look at his boobies.
We need to have a talk.
Eventually though, meeting with General W.R. Monger, amazing name, who runs the facility and has caught these monsters over the span of 50 years, revealing it to basically be the SCP Foundation, where in 1950, again fitting the 50s callback, the government wanted to hide the existence of monsters from the public and locked them in this facility. Which again, I love the size and scale of the facility and the choreography. This movie needs more credit there. Like seriously, making it feel like it's absolutely enormous that a literal 50-foot person is still dwarfed by it, and helps it feel so impenetrable and escapable. It's one of my favorite set pieces in the movie. I get so lost in so many shots and how they're composed and angled. If they ever make a DreamWorks platform fighter, this would be an awesome stage. Of course, in this facility of actual monsters, Susan, being basically a normal girl only a day ago, feels terrified and it clearly doesn't belong here. You really feel Susan's desperation and hopelessness as her life is torn away from her. You can't help but feel legitimately bad for her, considered to be a monster and freak of nature that will never be able to get back to her family or old life. It's just a sweet little cinnamon roll. She doesn't deserve this.
I want a real kitten, hanging from a real tree. I want to go home.
I love her. Stay strong, Susan. Just like how I feel about Ruby, I like how the movie really doesn't shy away from the character's vulnerabilities, which makes them more pitiable and relatable. We can't help but be invested and root for them to succeed despite the odds. Like, God, look at her. I want to give her a hug so badly. This movie does a really good job of making you feel for Susan and her situation, and constantly has the feeling of she shouldn't be in the situation throughout, which really does help in her overall character growth to take charge of her own life. But eventually cuts back to space with a really cool aesthetically pleasing shot of the starship and its interior. Love the vibes of this, the designs and patterns of the ship giving a sci-fi callback look, but also textured in a creepy carved way to the way Galaxhar emerges. It's really cool. Again, I gotta give this movie points. I know it's to make a good shot in designs when they want to. Again, really helping with that feeling of foreboding, which matches a lot of the terror of aliens in these old sci-fi movies. Also, a really cool way is revealed with seeing parts of him from just his eyes to his slinking long tentacle arms, and then revealing his full design in this cool rotating shot highlighting how he slinks around. I have heard some things that make Galaxhar's design kind of controversial, with people upset that Mega Man looks like him and blaming this movie for it, which one that's just stupid. Are we blaming the movie that came before for the character that came out after? Shouldn't it be the new movie's job to make their character different? But hey, we put Mega Man on a pedestal recently, so we can't say that movie did anything wrong. And two, you completely missed the design philosophy and inspiration for both these characters. Yeah, sure, on the surface level, they're both plays on the big-headed alien trope that's common everywhere. The thing is, with Mega Man, he's supposed to invoke the stereotypical evil genius trope, with the alien aspect just kind of being arbitrary in that regard. Like, he's pretty much a one-to-one parody of the leader from Marvel to change the colors from green to blue. Like, pretty much exact. Titan Minion is a pretty direct reference to Roman from Robot Monster, but Galaxhar is supposed to be a homage and parody of pretty much every evil alien invader from these 50s sci-fi media, which is why his design has way more alien tropes. Even his name is so over-the-top spacey. Obviously, his biggest inspiration comes from Invasion of the Saucermen, with the big head and evil eyes. I also feel a lot of influence from the canon myth from the Twilight Zone, not to mention some of the other weird and wacky aliens that show had all over its episodes. Even his squid-like legs could be a reference to the book version of World of Worlds, of the squid-like tentacled Martians, not to mention his hands looking very similar to the 50s adaptation of that movie. Not to mention, no doubt, the influence of many different pulp sci-fi comics of the day. Like, there's a lot that went to this guy's design, and I really appreciate him being a huge amalgam of sci-fi alien invaders from the era they're satirizing. I really appreciate it more knowing that inspiration. It feels it deserves so much more credit than just Diet Mega Man like people treat it. Galaxhar is awakened to find the source of Quantonium, the element that was in the meteorite that hit Susan, and sends a robot drone to Earth to get it back. Gonna get the Omnitrix though. Vilgax already beat into the punch there with his own giant death bot. It lands on Earth right in front of two teens trying to make out in their car. I wonder if this is another reference to Invasion of the Saucermen, but it could also just play on that overall movie trope of these lovers being the first to meet the monster at night, even the ones who want to go and check it out immediately after. Even more parodying the trope where the girl wants to investigate and the guy is terrified. The government immediately goes to action to contain the thing. Not only do we get to see its sheer size again, I love this movie's shot composition, and we get a good look at its design. That honestly just looks like a giant metal minion, but this movie came out first. I think it's great, being a homage to the many different sci-fi robots at the time, like Gort from The Day the Earth Stood Still, or Robbie the Robot for Forbidden Planet, or the ones from Target Earth or Cronus. Just kind of mishmashing that to make an inspired but new design that incorporates elements from all of them. I especially love the giant, eerie cyclopean eye on the wires making it look bloodshot like it's just about to snap. Big Eye helps to almost give it a personality and make it look kinda goofy, but also just really lifeless and threatening. Granted, it also does look like that one plankton mech from the SpongeBob movie, but we can't hold that against it. President of the United States is going to make first contact with a lot of build-up, just finally getting to the robot. And then the movie gives us just one of the best cinematic scenes of all time. Just watch. I love it, just the complete non sequitur absurdism of the situation. It's hilarious, it's an over-the-top bait and switch, like how the hell is this gonna accomplish anything? And also just like, everyone apparently thought this was gonna work, no one really questioned it. Coming from parodying these movies, it's so funny that in the usual dread or seriousness of the government trying to make first contact with an alien race, that this was their go-to method of communication. Like, this was plan A, it was literally the podium. And leads to another fake out where the robot apparently really doesn't like funk, reveals it's fully powered for him to go hostile, leading to a full retaliation by the military, but of course in these movies the army can't do jack against the monster, which is another reference to the day the earth stood still, also leading to another great moment.
Eat lead, alien robot! Evidently they eat lead.
This movie is full of good jokes, guys. Getting to the war room, which is another common scene in these old monster movies. Like seriously, there's always a scene of the government guys in a long drawn-out sequence explaining the monster's power and potential threat and path, plus with other good jokes together.
We need our top scientific minds on this. Get India on the phone.
Can we transport the United States to a safer planet?
I say we give this alien a green card and make him proud to be an American.
And remember when these actually sounded ridiculous? Good times. Maybe a little too relevant nowadays.
And we all know nukes ain't an option.
Sure they are. I just,
Luckily, then Monger shows up when the president's out of ideas on how to stop the droid from destroying the world. The idea to use their imprisoned monsters to fight the alien threat. It also just occurred to me that Creature Commandos totally stole the idea from this movie. I always thought it felt kind of familiar. Monger shows off the monsters and their backstory with the screaming woman gag. Which can be a bit excessive here, but remembering these type of movies, a woman literally always screams when the monsters on screen, so I choose to believe it's parodying that. Also pretty funny with how dedicated they are to the gag.
Miss Ronson, please. Thing, Bob. Someone get her out of here!
I appreciate as well that the footage is in black and white, calling back to the actual movie origins of the monsters they were based off of. Neat touch. And title drop.
suppose we go forward with your monsters versus aliens idea thingy.
Back in the compound, Dr. Cockroach is helping Ginormica turn back to normal size for about a month, somehow rigging the supercomputer out of actual scraps and garbage. I appreciate that they're actually helping each other. There's a genuine bond between these characters that's nice given the circumstance. However, it fails as electrocuting her. This could be another callback to 50-Foot Woman, where Nancy was defeated by electrocution, which is a nice touch. I think this movie really did its homework to call back all of its inspirations, not only for the direct parodies, also just the genre itself, and I think it deserves so much more credit for it. Like when you're a kid, you just accept it as fun and weird, but when you grow up and get more cultured on movie history, you appreciate so much more of the callbacks and dedication that went to making it a huge throwback of the era. Something I really wish more people and hell reviewers actually notice and give appreciation for. I'm not even like a huge old movie buff, and I still got that. You all need to be more cultured. But yeah, it didn't work with Link just saying that it's never going to work out and they'll never get out. And then a really dark but also hilarious non sequitur joke.
The Invisible Man did.
No, he didn't.
He died of a heart attack 25 years ago.
In that very chair. He's still there.
Again, I love this movie's sense of humor. Come on, guys, you're really sleeping on it. But I think he got out. He just went to Sony to hang out with other monsters. Remember when people were upset he wasn't hot? I do. A monger comes in to give them the offer. Defeat the droid and they get their freedom, which of course they jump to, as the droid is going to attack San Francisco as a mass evacuation is going on. And everyone's happy to be free. Until they see the actual size of the Colossus. Especially Susan, who's literally just a normal woman having a panic attack, but the others actively try to help her, telling her to take shelter in the city as they'll handle it. But since the thing is after Susan, it just goes to the city as well, the lady taking the sewers and Cockroach completely jury-rigging a rocket bus out of spare parts. Honestly, I know people jump to Mega Man as DreamWorks' best genius character, but I feel people sleep on Dr. Cockroach. Like on a one-on-one fight without the major one weaponry, I think he'd win. He can make high-tech machinery near instantly with literal scraps and garbage, not to mention the durability factor. However, Susan's terrified as the thing is fully on attack, with again really cool shots in city destruction, taking full advantage of the character's size and making a really cool set piece for an action sequence, where even at 50 feet tall she's dwarfed by the Colossus and climbing the city like a huge jungle gym. It's really cool, guys, come on. Love this joke. Eventually getting the cool idea to use cars as roller skates. That's so fun and creative. They even use actual real-life references by filming an animator in a scale model of the city to best capture how Ginormica would traverse the city, and the feeling, which I think worked really well. It's just a cool scene and deserves more love and credit. But yes, he's zooming all over the city to the point where I legitimately expect Sonic being chased by the gunshot to show up and pass by them. With Link showing up with a good joke. and Cockroach with the battle bus to catch up with the droid but fail as Susan runs through the Golden Gate Bridge, with the droid going through the bay to get to her, trapping people on it while getting tangled in the wires and threatening to collapse the whole thing, and trying to straight up grind her up. Jesus. Where's Ruby going when you need her? She could 100% solo this thing. And most of DreamWorks, honestly. Sorry, not sorry. Maybe I should quit it with the Ruby Gilman references, but hey, it's my video. I can do whatever the hell I want. And I'm gonna make more. Watch my videos on the movie, please. The kaiju does show up saved by Insectosaurus being lured there on the other side. Susan also shows off her incredible strength for the first time, actually holding back its arm, which oppresses everyone, even tries to save the bystanders. The others quickly get to work with Cockroach infiltrating the thing and Bob helping the people after this funny scene.
To get these people off the bridge!
Got it.
God, this guy is really funny, like, even without the memes. But Susan really does save the day after everyone gets incapacitated, pulling the disoriented robot single-handedly pretty much by pulling it to destroy the bridge and literally decapitating it with it. Jesus. I love this entire scene. It's so massive and badass. It's such a huge scale that takes advantage of the entire set piece of San Fran in the cast, and also so Susan for the first time taking the initiative in her life and fighting back, and even more actually winning. Even Galaxhar in the ship realize that she's too powerful to just send a robot to destroy and go,
Fine. I'll do it myself.
But even Susan's ecstatic at her achievement, even saying that her only 3 weeks ago couldn't imagine taking out such a colossus, already showing her growth to literally become a stronger person. I like how everyone sans Link is also super proud of her too, helps build their bond. They're such a nice group, but everyone's happy that they earned their freedom, but Link points out that she's still giant, and Susan's fantasized normal life with Derek isn't really possible, which gets pretty much proven immediately once returned to Modesto, already worried their new friends might not fit in. Another good joke incoming.
Follow my lead.
But yeah, the monsters don't make a good impression as she goes to find Derek herself. But even though the monsters just try to blend in and be normal, it's clear they just can't fit in and people are still terrified of them, and even just their eccentricities. Basically, that they're always just going to be perceived as monsters no matter how hard they try, and they fundamentally can't be a part of society. And it's actually a really interesting and nuanced idea. Like, for the most part, these type of stories, when the monsters get freedom, that's it. They got what they wanted. Mega happy ending for everyone. But it really shouldn't be. I think of like Undertale. The best ending has the monsters free from the mountain and able to integrate in the real world like they've always wanted, with basically no real consequences after. And while it works for a happy ending, it's always, I don't know, felt a little shallow and unrealistic. Like, they really shouldn't be able to just easily integrate the human society. It should be a struggle. Even if the monsters are very human-like personality-wise, many can be too eccentric and weird, used to their own ways, and just actively ignores a lot of the established conflict of humans hating monsters and sealing them away in the first place. But this movie actively addresses that fact. Even when the monsters want to be normal, they fundamentally can't. People are still afraid of them and they can't actually fit in with any of them. They can't be humans no matter how hard they try. They have no place in normal society, the human world. Ironically, they're just as much outcast and isolated in the normal world than they were in prison. The freedom they've wanted for over 50 years is pretty much worthless. And that's a really nuanced take to this whole setup that makes the characters all the more tragic. And for a lot of people, especially nowadays, it's actually relevant. So many people feel that they just can't relate or be normal in functional society, always feel like a freak just by how they are and how they're fundamentally different from people. And no matter how hard they try, they'll always be an outcast. I felt that, and know so many other people do, especially nowadays. And it's actually a really poignant and relatable aspect to the movie you kind of wouldn't expect for just a non-serious film. I feel that everyone has felt that at least somewhat. And I feel the movie needs more credit on that front for actively taking the time to address that point and develop it, and make it important for later, which I'll get to. We also see Derek doing his next recording, really not seeming down about losing Susan, as she literally grabs him from his job in another direct reference to Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. Again, they really did their homework here. And while Susan's of course overjoyed to be back with him and see him again, Derek clearly isn't.
Want that?
Of course. I just don't see how I can have that with you.
Hey dude, I personally know a few people who would love to have her if you don't. But it's not even that just to prove how much of a massive shithead he really is, but straight up victim blames her that he can't sacrifice his career trying to help her and get her back to normal, and then breaks up with her as he can't see a relationship with a giant woman working out.
I'm not looking to get married and spend the rest of my life in someone else's shadow. And you're casting a pretty big shadow.
Wow. What a f***ing coward. Comment section and hell, the entire internet collectively boo this man right now. Good job. But like, in all seriousness, this was an absolutely heartbreaking scene. I mean, we know Susan is an absolute cinnamon roll who literally fought for her life to get her normal life back, one just taken by extreme circumstance, just wanting the familiar comfort of someone she loves and a chance of getting her old life again in her dream. Just to prove how much her little fiance who tried to marry her immediately turned his back on her the minute she became a problem to him by no fault of her own, and refused to even try and get any sort of relationship back, actively victim blaming her for her condition that's a bother on his life and his potential career, and pretty much got rid of her last shred of hope of returning to her old life, and absolutely heartbroken that the man she fell in love with never really loved her back. And these type of people and one side of relationships actually exist in the real world, and is a harsh reminder of that. And again, her reaction just, oh my god, I feel so bad for you. Just like the other monsters, even though she had by far a chance to have a life outside, a life she did once have, she's ultimately just another monster now who can't belong. Even the other monsters join with her in her depressive episode.
We could save every city on the planet and they'd still treat us the same way they've always treated us. Like monsters.
And it really gets me to appreciate that this movie does have legitimate death, and I feel a lot of people miss or just don't care about. It's obviously at first a homage and parody of classic sci-fi monster movies, focusing on comedy and parody, but there's still legitimate emotions and depth to the characters, and nuanced perceptions and takes from it, even relevant to so many real people. It kinda makes me upset that so many people seem to miss it and just kinda think this movie as throwaway garbage. Like, come on guys, give this movie some actual damn credit. I got surprisingly into this whole plot segment, and plays into DreamWorks' notorious reputation of incorporating imposter syndrome to their characters, and this is another example of it. Susan at least realized how much of a two-faced jerk her fiance was, and how he was just using her the whole time, and started to stand up for herself in that regard. Which again, Susan does have legitimate character growth through the movie, at first being an overly optimistic dreamer, let herself be pushed around so much, and never standing up for herself, literally becomes stronger, taking the initiative, and realizing that she needs to take charge of her life, and is actually proud of her own achievements and grateful to the people, these freaks of nature, who legitimately cared about her more than the people she thought did. It's another satisfying moment. Susan is no longer satisfied with being a part of someone else's story, but happy to be the person she ended up being. Well, until she gets taken by Mothership Zeta here. Insecto tries to save her, actually with a face of genuine concern, showing that yes, they actually do comprehend what's going on and have some emotional intelligence. But then gets hit with a pretty sick looking energy can that seemingly kills it, Jesus. With Susan once again waking up in an unknown chamber with a new skin suit. Jesus, how many times is this woman gonna be violated like that? I actually do dig the design of it, looks super mystical and alien, they didn't need to go the extra mile. Also horrifyingly revealing an entire legion of Colossus droids waiting to be activated. But she gets captured. Wait, if she wasn't captured, then like, why is she there? Like, she got a whole change of clothing, she had to have been captured before. This kinda doesn't make sense. But still, Galaxhar comes in to intimidate her, even lampshading this all technically happened before.
Be terrified. You wake up in a strange place, wearing strange clothes, imprisoned by a strange being floating on a strange hovering device. Strange, isn't it?
Strange, isn't it?
But Susan shows her legitimate character growth after what she's been through. Now, once absolutely terrified in this situation, pretty much standing her ground and refused to give in to him. Even he's impressed.
It's not the first time.
Wow, you really get around.
But states as the quantonium she absorbed is the most powerful element in the galaxy, he did all of this just to get it, thinking he's owed it. But as he's monologuing, Susan, again showing her growth, isn't having that and fights back, and literally has gotten so strong and confident that she breaks out of a goddamn force field. Like literally, he had no idea this could happen. She literally just broke herself out of her energy prison near instantly, and just completely plows through his defenses. Like, holy hell, this girl's a badass. Like, look at her, she's goddamn awesome. How is this girl not considered one of the most badass DreamWorks characters? He literally got an alien warlord with a full-on armada, scared absolutely shitless, and turned his entire abduction and capture plan against him as he runs for his life terrified, trying his best to stop her as she's breaking this ship with her bare hands. Like, she wants some blood. I love this girl so much. Again, compared to how she was in the beginning, even with her powers, terrified of everything. Running for her life is just the threat of a giant robot that's straight up running at the main villain and bringing through a galactic warship to get him. I have never seen another DreamWorks character just fully turn the villain's entire plan operation inside out by sheer determination. It's so unexpected, but awesome. It's just...
My little baby off to destroy people.
It's beautiful. I love this movie. Galaxhar only barely gets back control, tricking her to stepping right through the extraction chamber he was taking her to anyway. While she is literally still breaking the containment, gets the quantonium siphoned out from her, turning her to normal. Not her hair though, that's still died like an anime character. As the ship absorbs it and becomes powered up, and yeah, honestly this ship is pretty damn cool. I can't be the only one who gets like huge aperture science vibes from it, especially with the black and teal colors in the huge sprawling areas with awesome sci-fi touch. It's awesome. Still, even depowered, Susan tries to fight, once more showing how much of a stronger and braver person she became, even if she's quickly put in her place, and Galaxhar becomes a lot more threatening, as he plans to use Earth to repopulate his species after their planet was destroyed by his own hands. Yeah, he was the one who destroyed the planet in the beginning, which, given the ominous tone in the background of the beginning scene, you could already feel it was destroyed by nefarious means. Hey, maybe he was the one who destroyed Megamind's planet in his movie. Would make sense, like seriously, how else would a black hole suddenly be there? Not really a planet of geniuses, are they? That's a Pixar theory style take right there. But he says he'll explain his nuanced backstory when he begins his cloning process, leading to one of the funniest scenes in the movie.
I found out my parents were... No child should ever have to endure that. So I went on the road with a giant... And then I was all, no way. And she was all, yes way. And I was like... But I've told you too much already.
I swear, this movie makes me laugh like an idiot. It's seriously underrated in that regard. But honestly, I feel this is a good place to talk about Galaxhar himself. Now, DreamWorks has a reputation for making outstandingly complex and great villains. Well, people say they do, but struggle to name a villain not from Kung Fu Panda, Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, or Megamind. But Galaxhar really isn't. He's not complex or nuanced at all, so he doesn't compare to those guys. But that's not really the point of him. He's not made to be a sympathetic villain. He's meant to be an over-the-top comedic villain for the movie, in a similar vein to Lord Farquaad from the original Shrek. It's not like the movie really could work with a serious, dramatic villain like those guys, especially since, as I said, it's a comedic and fun throwback to the 50s era of sci-fi. And how those alien overlords he's directly inspired by and parroting are so one-note overtly evil, loudly shouting that they're gonna conquer the world and destroy humanity. Like, they make a joke about it, that he apparently has a super intricate and nuanced backstory to explain his actions that you'll just never get to actually see, as mostly just an evil douchebag.
Days of running and hiding are over.
I think he fits perfectly for the movie and what they're going for, and also I think he's a great comedic villain and perfectly shows off the actual threat but campiness of this type of evil alien archetype. Like, I really love some jokes.
It is important to note that most of you will not survive the next 24 hours. Those of you that do survive will be enslaved and experimented on. To recap, I come in peace, mean you no harm, and you all will die.
But if I had to headcanon an explanation with what was given, in a parallel to the heroes, he was also an outcast from society, plea for what he was born as, and shunned and resented just as a child, which molded him to be resentful for the rest of his kind. However, he did eventually find a woman he could love and found love in return and married. But something went wrong. Seemingly she wanted to have kids and he didn't, lead to a huge argument that broke them up, as he lost the love of his life, maybe also due to society's intervention.
Thereafter was married. Things were going well until she wanted to.
Or maybe even paralleling Derek, where either one was just using the other. It was never actually real love. And then basically turned against his own kind and set up for the active extinction of his race and resentment, in a Count Bleck type situation, and now seeks to rebuild the species and entire society in his own image. Literally, by cloning an empire of himself and using the chunk of quantonium in the planet's core to do so. That's what I want to believe. Did you like it? Tell me what you think. But with his threat of conquest and Insectosaurus seemingly dead and covered in silk, the monsters aren't going to take this lying down, and get Monger's help to get there. Even with a nice scene of him as their warden for 50 years, now giving them respect as soldiers, it's a neat addition that makes him more nuanced. Just to wonder what he did to be awarded the Shrek Medal of Honor. And well, foreshadowing. Also, can we just acknowledge that this dude is going to literally start a full-on genocide campaign, using his clone to pilot the droids to destroy all of humanity by themselves? Like, one pretty much destroyed San Francisco when it wasn't even his target and just barely was defeated. How about like 100? Plus, this guy just straight up killed an entire species. I think this guy is seriously one of the biggest body counts and potential body count of literally every DreamWorks character. Put respect on his name. He was even gonna straight up put Susan in the incinerator once he extracted her power. But the monsters were on the ship thinking of a way to infiltrate the clone army to save her, leading to the greatest line of the movie.
I may not have a brain, gentlemen, but I have an idea.
Perfect, no notes. Like the best meme potential ever. It works so well. Even with a pretty good fake out after, leading to another great joke.
You're like a gun.
Yes, I would. Hey guys, look.
This movie is great comedy, guys. Like, come on, it's great. It's so damn funny. There's also another good scene where the monsters still consider Susan as a part of them, even when she's technically normal. So that they're not just together by their circumstances being outcast, they legitimately care for each other regardless. Also, compared to normal Susan, I didn't realize just how freaking huge Dr. Cockroach's head is. Must be for his big brain. Eventually getting the idea to blow the power cord to destroy the warship before the invasion, but they get caught, and hey, is that another reference?
Destroy all monsters!
I guess also foreshadowing, and leading to a big fight on the ship where the monsters can really go all out with the clone fodder. Really fun. Eventually reaching the main computer where Dr. Cockroach has to crack the code combination by dance panel. I guess the ship's security was designed by Richard Watterson. Still glorious.
PhD is in dance.
This whole climax, a blast. The ship trying to explode, Galaxhar prepares to escape with the Quantonium as the ship's on lockdown. But only Susan is able to escape with the others trapped inside. But the monsters just flat out tell them that she should just leave and save herself and to leave them behind. She can have her old life back and they're just monsters. Now, normally I would consider the situation kind of forced for an emotional climax, but I actually think it fits perfectly. This is entirely dependent on the previous scenes with the monsters free from their prison after 50 years, but still see that they can't actually integrate in normal society no matter how hard they want to. So we'll just always see them as monsters despite them trying to act normal and even heroic, just deep down too different to ever actually join peaceful society. In reality, they're just as isolated and alone being free than they were hidden from sight. They're freaks of nature who don't belong in the real world. They have no chance of a life fundamentally, but they know Susan does. She's the only one here who had a life and one she can go back to and rebuild, especially now that she's normal. And they love her. They risk everything to save her after being abducted. And if she can get a happy ending and make it out, it's all they've wanted. They already lost one of their few friends, and they have nothing worth living for if they do make it out. If she can make it, they're happy to die for her. And holy shit, that's so tragic and emotionally nuanced, like God. It's actually kind of earned with the context. But of course, Susan can't let them die. Even though they think they're monsters who don't belong in the world, she considers them her closest friends. They were the ones who always had her back and supported her, warts and all. Out there when pretty much everyone else refused to. They understood her and supported her in a way literally no one else could, and were only a source of companionship during that horrible time in her life. And even when she's not a freak monster like them, they still consider her a part of them because of the bond they shared. They basically became a found family, and it's great. And Susan, who was once superpowered and ran from danger, allowing her friends to take the fire, she refuses after her character growth and goes out of her way to find a way to save them, powers or not. There is legitimate engaging character growth in this movie. Why don't more people see it? It's great. And in a callback to that same scene makes Jury Rake rollerblades to outrun the army of droids. But she's not running, she's actively facing them this time, fully without powers, even making a chain reaction to destroy them all. It's like poetry, man. Single-handedly not only taking out his armada and cannon, but literally just one-shotting him in his hangar. She doesn't need superpowers to be strong, it's all her now. She's standing up for herself and taking charge of her own life more determined than ever. Look at her!
You could have killed me!
Then we understand each other.
Even without power, she still charges at the dude with no plan as he tries to escape the exploding ship. Even then, still taking him out at gunpoint to force him to open the hatch. But he says he can't, and she sure as hell can't either, just as Susan. But she says she sure as hell can, and she's Ginormica, shooting the Quantonium and bringing her back to her supersized form. And again, I love the arc. I can't even say it's forced for the climax, it fits for her character arc. Susan was overjoyed with her life just being a bride to an egotist, unable to stand up for herself at all and be part of someone else's story. She saw herself being an enormous freak of nature as the worst thing that could possibly happen to her, and did everything she could to try and be normal, with even the other monsters acknowledging that her dream life doesn't sound so great. She never stood up for herself until life literally forced her to, at first giving in as she normally would, thinking that she's just a normal girl, until she had the initiative for the first time, and accomplished something she never thought she could. And she's proud of herself, legitimately proud of herself for her own amazing achievement, because she didn't know she had it in her, reaching heights she'd never felt before, only to then reveal her perfect dream life never was a dream life in the first place. A life of complacency and probably mediocrity. But now she realizes she can stand up for herself, gaining confidence and self-respect and a determination that she really can be strong and independent. She literally managed to break out of her special containment and nearly kill the villain to the shock of everyone. And even when she got what she wanted and became normal, she never lost that fire in her. It was never the power, it was fully her, as she pretty much single-handedly destroyed its entire operation and did what no one else thought she could by her sheer determination. And ultimately sacrifices her once perfect normal life because that wasn't a life worth living, and takes back her once freakish nightmares predicament because she realizes it's ultimately her and what she wants to be. It's beautiful, guys. With the other monsters accepting their death, happy to know each other, Ginormica arrives to save them, breaking through the wall, but with no way to escape before the ship blows up or they fall to their death. Maybe Bot could survive, but they do get saved. by Insectosaurus as a butterfly. And it's like, yes. Not only is it a good twist for the big monster and a perfect Deus Ex Machina, I like to imagine they forced the metamorphosis to save Susan, but it's yet another good reference. Because if you know that Insectosaurus is based off of Mothra, you know that they usually spend a chunk of the movie as a giant grub before turning to the flying moth at the climax and with a fake out death. And if you knew that, you could predict it. It's such a good way to end it. Galaxhar explodes with the rest of his ship. Damn, rip bozo.
I beg of you, I'm the last of my kind. Destroying me would wipe us off the planet forever.
I can live with that.
And they come back to town with a hero's welcome as everyone knows they saved the Earth from complete alien annihilation, and also possibly predicting monster in the process. But Derek comes about trying to weasel back into Susan's life with her newfound worldwide fame, saying he forgives her for the incident that turned her giant, though again just for his career, and rightfully kicks that bastard out on air. Underrated girl boss, I tell you. Also leading to this meme, which granted can be pretty funny, but I love the context. Because in the movie, Bob had no idea what to do for his dream when freed, and just copied Susan's of wanting to marry Derek. But even a literal brainless idiot like him realized that he's a douchebag who doesn't deserve a relationship, and calls him out on it. It's kinda great. But the heroes can't rest on their laurels, as there's a monster in Paris. No, not that one. Which is another good callback right in the beginning with Susan dreaming wanting to see Paris in her original dream life, having to put it on hold for someone who didn't care about her. Now with her new determined life to go and actually reach it for herself in a new unorthodox way. It's a great way to bookend her arc, as they end flying to the sunset. But okay, in all seriousness, I did not expect to love this movie as much as I did. I legitimately thought when starting I had to make a ton of excuses for it based off nostalgia, but no, I found this so damn enjoyable. Like, I'm not kidding, I had a blast with this movie. It was so entertaining. I legitimately might consider this one of DreamWorks' most fun movies, and it skyrocketed appreciation from me. It's such a fun throwback to the 50s sci-fi movie era, having a blast satirizing, referencing, and parodying the many movies. So many jokes and scenes not only calling back to the tropes of that era, but parodying and exaggerating them in just an over-the-top way. I only kind of wish it was even more campy and tongue-in-cheek with it.
The UFO has landed in America. The only country UFOs ever seem to land in.
Again, this movie's entire concept is a jumble of so many monsters, aliens, and versus movie, taking inspiration all over the genre and era from the many iconic creatures this time has brought us. I went over so many details and such that they didn't need to do, but prove how much this movie is a love letter to the era. I've seen other reviewers, respected reviewers with so many more subscribers than me, say it's not a good throwback to the era. Like, are you kidding me? You saw the video. I went through so many references and points showing how deep the movie goes in so many aspects, the referencing the era and its characters, design, story, jokes, lampshading, and satire, and just so much. Saying this movie isn't a good throwback to that time is like legitimately saying that Megamind isn't a good superhero parody and deconstruction because you've never read a comic in your life. I'm not even a huge old sci-fi guy. I didn't do that much research and I understood so much and appreciated it. What's stopping everyone else? I don't get the criticism for this movie. I enjoyed so much of it, how it not only parodies and homages the genre, but updates it for a modern audience with much more modern pieces of storytelling. Not only fusing these movies and tropes together to form a fun story, combining monster movie and alien invasion movies, actually adding some legitimate character and emotional drama, which plenty of these movies completely lacked. I love Susan's character arc, becoming bigger and stronger person, and realizing she's so much more than the life she was used to, and stood up for herself and taking charge of her own destiny. To me, it's not as relatable or powerful as Ruby Gilman's character arc, which again, I consider to me to be the most relatable and precious character journey that truly spoke to me. Watch my many videos for more info. But I still got so genuinely engaged with her and love her, and she's super underrated as a DreamWorks protagonist. She deserves prime animated girl boss status, and I will fight for that. Love the other complexities like the exploration of monsters as fundamental to not being a part of society no matter how much they try, and the nuance it brought to the story to developing them as characters, and especially the friendship and bond between the characters. I love these guys. I love how supportive they are of each other, and how much they would legitimately die for the others and want to see happy. They love each other and are legitimately a found family, finding souls and being the only people who actually respect them and don't find them freaks of nature. Even when one is cured, they still consider her a part of the family. They are truly an underrated DreamWorks friend group and deserve so much attention there. I feel the camaraderie on screen so much is so precious. I feel they're one of the best friend groups in the studio. Not only that, it's freaking hilarious. I laughed so hard in so many moments. So it's great satire, one-liners, lampshading, just flat out great comedic timing, slapstick, and just sheer absurdist humor. I kept laughing like an idiot all throughout. It's not just ironically funny like so many memes make you think. There's so many good jokes on this movie. I love it.
Nothing happened. Maybe my count.
I don't know how this isn't treated as such a fun, over-the-top classic of DreamWorks, even just beyond the memes it spawned. I think it's one of the most entertaining and bonkers movies they've made. I think the only reason it's not treated as a good movie is because it doesn't have a serious storyline, and come on. Like, one, it's a throwback to a genre that doesn't have serious storylines or nuance for nearly every movie. It's pure schlocky fun. Like, they even take the piss out of it at times, like with the villain having a super tragic and nuanced backstory you'll never get to know the full story of. So he's just a douchebag. It's hilarious. And that's the thing that bugs me. Like, I swear this community only respects animation that's a completely dramatic masterpiece that things only deserve appreciation if it's damn Kung Fu Panda 2 levels. That's just a bad mindset. Like, not only are you being completely closed-minded to anything that's not a legitimate masterpiece, even if it's still good, completely ignore all the good aspects these movies have when they're clearly not trying to be in that level. I don't know if it's like overcorrecting to justify animation's reputation for being kid stuff. Like, no, there's seriously good stuff here, but there's so many good enjoyable aspects to these movies you disregard because you need to think things need to be cinematic masterpieces to deserve love and respect, and I hate it. Imagine if we did this to movies in general, that only overly dramatic epic masterpieces deserve respect and love, and these that are over-the-top action comedies like this are pure garbage that shouldn't exist. It's horrible, but you're literally doing it. And I know for a fact that you don't even follow your own mindset, that you have a goofy fun movie that isn't a masterpiece by any means that you still love and cherish, especially if you saw it as a kid. I can say right now that the original Madagascar is a poorly written mess of a movie with no consistent plotline and absolutely no character development by anyone, mediocre humor and forced pop cultural references, and you're gonna get mad at me for saying it. Why? Because you saw the movie as a kid and you loved it and still have emotional attachment to this day. Apparently, Over the Heads is an ambitious cinematic masterpiece because you saw it when you were 7. Does B-movie have any legitimate redeeming qualities outside of memes? So if you can still love these movies despite them clearly not being serious and being over-the-top comedies, why can't this movie get unironic love too? I've gotten over so many good and enjoyable aspects that I seriously learned to love it a lot more even than I saw it as a kid. And I seriously implore everyone to give it a rewatch with everything considered. It's just a good, enjoyable, fun ride through an old drama, and it's now become one of my personal favorites. Oh man, I'm still not over it. Now, while I would say that's all, it's actually not. This actually did become a bit of a franchise, and I'm all for it. This is one of those movies that just seems begging for expansion, has infinite potential. So many new stories and characters for these guys to meet, especially given there's still so much from this era to take influence from. And it got some continuations, and we'll take a look at them. Starting off with a few TV specials, first being a Halloween special, Mutant Pumpkins from Outer Space. Though before we start, I need to mention the promotional posters for the special. These are amazing. I love them. I love the throwback to the old vintage 50s movie poster style. It's drawn so well and stylized, looks so gorgeous and so fitting for the franchise. Oh, I love them so much. And yeah, it's a really fun Halloween special. Starting out with a UFO landing on a pumpkin patch to... maybe this was the real truth behind Color Out of Space, turning the pumpkins not only to mutant, but mutant aliens. So the title is fitting, but it takes place after the movie with the game becoming world-class monster and alien hunters, and turning their compound to a base of operation. Neat. Halloween's coming, and while everyone's excited, League especially, as it's the monster's time to shine, Dr. Cockroach resents it after he was bullied as a kid and got his candy stolen. However, the UFO by Modesto got the attention of the government, and they're being tasked to investigate what happened. But suspiciously, the pumpkins are being given away for free to the whole town as the Murphy family goes over the top on Halloween. The monsters investigate with Bob excited to try and get free candy, Cockroach is sad to get over his childhood trauma, and Link disappointed that literally no one is scared of him, till the pumpkins spread throughout the town and make their attack, just as Susan investigates the field and farmer to see the oncoming rampage in town, but also getting a great joke.
That my mother was a tomato. I speak produce.
He say
Horrible things about my mother in a salad bar.
The pumpkins get bigger the more candy they eat, led by the biggest one named Wicked Jack, as Doc says to,
Until the whole world becomes their pumpkin patch.
set their sights on the Murphy house as the biggest source in town, with the monsters and Susan running back to try and crush them all. Now, this would be a cakewalk with the given 50-foot woman thing, but the pumpkins, in a cool-ass move, literally fused themselves to become an even bigger colossus. God, I love this thing's design, it's so gnarly. And yeah, it's a super fun scene and fight, especially given it's literally a TV special. Like, they put a lot of effort into this. Eventually, Cockroach gets the idea to try and feed it so much candy it explodes, with everyone working together to get as much candy as they can. Eventually doing the trick as Susan freaking uppercuts it, and it's at the source survives to finish the job. And though the Murphys are disappointed that she came back for a mission and not to see them, they still happen to have her back with the gang to spend Halloween together. Even Link managed to scare the last pumpkin to explode, which I'm sure will have no future consequences, and Monger arrives to say a job well done. But the mutant goop's not done yet as they infected the Murphys' carrot garden, which at first seems like an end joke but leads to the next short. But honestly, I love this special. It's so full of Halloween goodness, it's a ton of fun. So nice to see what happens to these characters outside of the movies, and get a taste for how their lives continued after, now as a worldwide team of heroes, and everyone has something to do, not to mention how completely drenched it is in the holiday. Plus the action is surprising and a ton of fun. This Halloween, I really recommend you watch it. It's just a great time for the season. I mean, what else are you gonna do? Watch Scared Shrekless? Well, I would say that, but I could not find footage of this thing anywhere online. I had to order a DVD to get footage. So like, I don't know, try to find the best you can. And whatever, still try to see it, I super recommend it. But then there's the next one, Night of the Living Carrots. Aired on Nintendo Video actually, starting right where Mutant Pumpkins left off after an introduction by Bob. This one's only about 10 minutes. The carrot gets accidentally taken out by Bob, who gets kicked out of the Murphy house for eating too much of the candy. Bob though thinks the carrot is a trick-or-treater and throws him in the house, and it turns out the carrot is a zombie carrot, which can affect people as they run from the house. But it's killed by Dr. Cockroach, showing that if a carrot is destroyed, it will dezombify those it infects. But the carrot reanimates itself into pieces as a whole horde, as Bob just keeps making more as they take shelter. By the way, Susan is not in this short for some reason, despite her literally being there in context. Probably because she could go all ginormic on these things. But yeah, it does become a Night of the Living Dead homage trapped in the house, and they take Monger and Link. But it's found that Bob is immune to the carrots, he doesn't have a brain, and can just eat them all to dissolve them. However, it traumatizes Bob because he can't stand eating carrots being fed it all his life. And yes, this is the origin of the meme. Right here. It's the reason why Bob can't eat the carrots. I mean, it was a fun meme while it lasted, perfect jokes about overstuffing an audience, but I never got a chance to do one. Oh well, I'll do it now. Don't cry, little subscriber. Daddy Blaze Blizzard has got enough Ruby Gilman content to feed you your entire life. Get another hour-long retrospective on the list. ASAP, they want more! And while admittedly the special really isn't too funny outside of some parts, this was great.
Eat the carrot. Save your friends. Eat the carrot. Save your friends. You know what? It's easier if I just make new friends.
Well, yes, Suni does get to finally do it, eat the carrots, and end it with a burp joke. You know, the movie was above that type of humor for the most part, but that really kind of sucks. Yeah, not nearly as good as the previous special. It was a bit entertaining, but just too by the numbers, and not enough good scenes or jokes. I really recommend you skip this one unless you really want to see what it holds with the origin of the meme. I guess there's also Bob's Big Break, which was a bonus short on the DVD when they used to make those. Think your Abundance of Doom and stuff. Taking place before the movie has to be Bob's birthday, as the monsters try and make a plan to get out of containment. Thanks to an experiment gone wrong by Cockroach, Bob is given the ability to read minds as he uses it against Monger to break out, while Bob thinks it's a party. At the very least, you can see more of the facility, but it gets busted at the last second by Bob who thinks it's a party game. But yeah, not much to this. A fun DVD actually gets some insight on how the monsters tried escaping before Susan came in, and also you get to see the Invisible Man. Better than Living Carrots, but not too much. There was also a licensed game. I mean, this was the era of every animated movie ever getting a video game tie-in. I wish we still had that, honestly. Man, I wish I got my dream Ruby Gilman action platformer game. Shame. But yeah, this movie was no different, and honestly it looks really cool, and there seems to be brand new sections and bosses that were never in the original movie, and it looks pretty cool and impressive. I wish I had time to get into it in more depth in this video, but hey, I was thinking of making a licensed game video on this channel one day, so I'll definitely consider it on the list. I don't think I need to talk about the movie promotions like the McDonald's one, which had toys that were based off previous iterations of the characters, like Ginormica in a red outfit like the Concepts. But I need to mention this. I swear one of the promotions I experienced for the movie as a kid was at my school, where they gave like these bookmarks with the characters. Did anyone else get that? Please tell me, I need to know. Same school also once gave us free posters for Pokemon Black and White when they came out. I don't know why, but I loved it. Tell me you had that too. I need someone to back it up. And lastly, the last big expansion of this franchise, the Nickelodeon TV series. I can't believe this happened, and I actually didn't hear about it until years later. Probably because it came out in friggin' 2013. Yeah, when the original came out in 2009. Yeah, at this point the steam for this franchise was pretty much gone. Like maybe in 2011 there could be hype, but almost 5 years later, yeah, nah. I mean, Legends of Awesomeness was also pretty late, but at least that came out right after the sequel, so I had a renewed hype to ride on. But this, yeah, everyone moved on by now. It was announced in 2009 after the movie, but I guess it just had a ton of production troubles and delays which took it that far. It was the third and last of the DreamWorks Nick TV tie-ins until they moved to Netflix and just kind of stopped for a while. Until they brought back the trend recently with Megamind Rules, which everyone loved. Now, I do think that the idea for a show is great. As I said, this is a movie that 100% has serious potential, with the gang going out and dealing with so many monsters and alien threats around the world. Mutant Pumpkins prove we can do that and be super fun. But from results, it's just...
I'm just not impressed.
Yeah, while Penguins was good, Legends of Awesomeness was alright if I remember. This was just... First off, the animation. I know it clearly couldn't look that great for a 3D series in 2013, but I feel even for the time it doesn't look great. Like, just look at this, I mean, Jesus, the budget must have been really small here. Look how Susan looks, she looks unfinished. Granted, Megamind Rules came out 10 years later and looks probably the same, so who frickin' knows. Okay, seriously, why does Turbo, of all DreamWorks properties, get the cool-ass stylized 2D animation while everything else gets cheap 3D? It's unfair. Man, now I'll never get my Keep You on the Edge of Wonder Beast style Ruby Gilman series. To the show itself, it did make some changes. It's after the movie, of course with the gang still working with the government to fight threats, but the first episode has an immediate change up, which I normally call in contact with an alien device that actually gives her the power to change from normal to giant form. Yeah, really. On one hand, it seems pretty bad for her character, especially after her growth. But on the other hand, I understand on production, since an entire series having the main character be 10 times bigger than everyone else and to fit in the same environment is really hard to do, so I understand giving her the power to swap. Though the show does make a running gag about her butts. I mean, I get it, but like, come on guys, at least try to hide it. I do like her new outfit. I do prefer the original prison garb, but it's a good mix of it and her later alien suit, making it look very superhero-like. Though also, Insectosaurus is just gone without any mention. Yeah, it's weird. I know they weren't really that important, but they were still a part of the team. It probably is due to the same issue that they're just too big to put in the show, but at least mention why they're not around. Now, I haven't seen the entire show, I don't have the time, and I really don't want to, so I just saw a handful of episodes. But the show takes place in Area 50-something. They mostly just stay around the area and get to shenanigans, which, yeah, that's where it's welcome a lot and makes so much of it really boring and samey. The writing also isn't much to talk about, being very hyper and pretty in name, with most plots being very drawn out and just not interesting or engaging. I don't even think kids would really like it. It does introduce a few new aliens, but they're really not too interesting. Most being the main antagonist, Culverton, who very obviously wants to take over the world, but gets to hang out in the facility. And it never really takes advantage of its potential. As I said, you could do a lot with the idea, but it really just took the most uninteresting route. Shame, I imagine you could have made a Wasp Woman XP and pair them with Dr. Cockroach. Could be fun. Frankly, it's just Planet Sheen tier. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they ever use assets from that show. This is kind of how I feel people think the actual movie is, just ugh. I don't recommend it unless you're really diehard for the movie and want to see these characters again, but it's so detached from the original, I don't think you feel satisfaction either way. And yeah, that's about it for the extended reads this franchise got. Still a lot more than most other movies got. But yeah, it looks like its time has already passed, and you're probably not going to see any more unless DreamWorks follows Disney's lead and makes their own crossover series. Wait, holy shit, that actually sounds amazing. They should do that. Ruby Gilman and Ginormico would get along so well. It would be perfect. Golden goose right there. But really, beyond that, I'm actually really glad I did this video. I started this not thinking I would like this movie that much and it was nostalgia, but I had so much fun revisiting this property. I had a complete blast with this movie and it's earned a spot in my heart after, in another movie I find legitimately underrated and overhated and I will constantly defend. And it again reminded me why I work on this channel, trying to bring attention and respect to media I feel don't get what they deserve, to bring across love and appreciation to animated media instead of trying to bring it down so much. And I hope that if you got this long, also got to learn more about the movie and understand all of its many good aspects and see it in a better light. And I really plead for you all to give it a rewatch with all this in mind. It's such a good time. And yeah, seeing the growth of the franchise in different ways made me appreciate it more, and some of the great stuff it spawned like Mutant Pumpkins. Again, it's unlikely this will ever get a resurgence, but hey, Megamind did after 10 years, it's possible. So yeah, I learned to love this movie again. I'll keep this experience in mind for any future movie that fences like this one. Tell me if you enjoyed it, and maybe I'll focus more on this stuff. But until then, see you later, and goodbye.